We begin today's shiur at the beginning of the new parak at the top line of Daf Mem Tes, the 6th parak of Nedarim. On the side, you'll notice we have a mivneh, a structural note, where the double underline is used, hadgoshas l'shonos shel Nedarim. We're highlighting the different texts or the versions of the vows. Hanoder min hamavushal muter b'tzli ub'sholuk. One who vowed not to benefit from mavushal. Now, mavushal means cooked. Someone who vows not to eat from cooked things. And I should caution that when we're learning Masechus Nedarim, as we've seen numerous times in the past, strict translation doesn't do the trick. One has to get into the meaning and the implication of different expressions. And that will figure quite prominently as we go through this sugya as well. So in the meantime, we're learning that one who says he's not going to benefit from mavushal, he is allowed to benefit from tzli and sholuk. Tzli might be explained as something that's roasted, and sholuk, you find a machlokes in the meforshim as to how to define that. Rashi takes the approach, mavushal yoser midai, it's overcooked. So that mavushal would mean something properly cooked, and sholuk something overcooked. The Tosfos, when it comes to sholuk, says sholuk she'ein mavushal yoser, it's undercooked. So whichever approach you take, you should realize that mavushal means properly cooked, and sholuk is cooked but not properly. And when we speak about a contrast between cooking or tzli and mavushal, tzli is a form of food preparation without a water environment. It's roasted over a fire, whereas mavushal is something prepared in a water environment. We continue in the Gemara, in the Mishnah. Omar koinum tavshil she'eni toem. Person vows that he will not taste from a tavshil. Ozer b'maisa kedera rach umuter b'ova. He is allowed to partake of maisa kedera rach. Let me correct myself. He's forbidden to partake in maisa kedera rach. Rach means loose or liquidy. It would be some type of dish that has, let's say, a lot of gravy to it. But he's allowed to partake of something that's oveh, that's thick. That's the opposite of watery. So that tafshil has a connotation. Something that's liquidy is forbidden, something that's dry or thick is allowed. Umuter bebeitza turmuta ub'dalas horamutza. One who vowed not to benefit from tafshil is allowed to benefit from these things, the egg, that's the turmuta egg, and the remutza dalas. The Gemara will address this in its explanation later on. The example that Rashi gives of something that's oveh is something that he calls daisa. Daisa is probably something like porridge. Hanoder mimaisa kedera, ein osur ela mimaisa raschosa. One who vowed not to benefit from maisa kedera, he is vowing not to benefit from something that is, Rashi says, dovo haroseh, something that's boiling, something that's hot, like rotiv, like gravy, things that are like that. Omar koinim hayored l'kedera she'eni toem. If a person uses that expression, also b'chol ha-misbashlim b'kedera. That language of imposed prohibition, self-prohibition from that which descends into a pot, then he is ossuring himself from anything that's cooked in a kedera, cooked in a pot. You'll see in the Rashi, with this expression called koinim hayored l'kedera, he's prohibiting himself whether it's a loose or thick type of dish. That's, of course, in contrast with the expression koinim tafshil she'eni tayim. The Gemara, Tanya, regarding someone who is noder min hamavushal, like the opening of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yoshia Ozer. And we have an arrow here. You can align it with the arrow above, and we see a machlokes tanoim. Does mavushal include tzli? in its connotation. According to the Mishnah, mevushal is distinguished from sli. Mevushal cooked, sli roasted. According to Rav Yoshia, the term mevushal will include sli. Even though there's no explicit proof to that, there nevertheless is an allusion to it, a hint to it. Shenemar, it says regarding the Korban Pesach, which we know from the Torah needs to be roasted. The Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, the Korban Pesach sacrifice, is not to be cooked. And look what the pasuk says in Divrei Yomim: Vayavashlu haPesach bo'esh kamishpot. And therefore, the word Vayavashlu cannot possibly mean cooked in water. And therefore, what does Vayavashlu mean? Roasted. So that if a person is noder minha mevushal, like the word Vayavashlu, he is prohibiting himself from roasted as well. The diamond marking is used here and explained on the sign under the Nosei Mivneh heading. These are shlavim, these are stages, lahasbir, machlokes hatanoim b'inyan tzli, legabi misha nodar min hamevushal. The attempt to understand this machlokes tanei controversy that we just presented. So, stage 1, lema b'hokum, can we say that it's in the following that they argue, the Rabbi Yoshia Sovar haloch achar loshen Torah, that in order to establish what is included in the vow, you define things by what you see in the scriptures. V'tana dilon Sovar b'nedarim haloch achar loshen b'nei adam. And our Tana, the first line of the Mishnah, holds that in Nedarim you follow the way people use terms in common speech. And in common speech, mevushal would exclude, is not inclusive of that which is roasted. The Gemara says, lo, that is not the analysis. Everyone is in agreement with the well-known principle that when you're trying to establish what is prohibited in a vow, you follow the common use of the term. Okay, so the common use of the term mevushal, what is it? Mar ki asrei umar ki asrei. There really is no machlokes. It's just that our Tana and Rabbi Yoshia were reflecting the common use in their respective locales. Ba'asra de Tana dilon, in the place of our Tana, l'tzli koru le tzli, u'lemevushal koru le mevushal. Each term is called by its own name. Roasted is called tzli, cooked is called mevushal. So if you're noder min mevushal according to our Tana, our Mishnah, you are not prohibiting yourself from tzli. Be'asra de Rav Yoshia, afilu tzli koru mevushal. In Rav Yoshia's town, even tzli is referred to, even roasted is referred to using the word mevushal. So as far as this stage of the Gemara is concerned, everyone bases the definition referred to in a neder, defining the neder, by common speech. The Gemara asks, v'hakra nasiv law. You notice we have a little arrow to the left-hand side of the Gemara text. It will line it with above, and you see that Rav Yoshia said that the term mevushal is based on the pasuk. So how can you say that he would not hold haloch achar loshen Torah? The Gemara says he doesn't base himself on loshen Torah. Asmachta bi'alma. The pasuk was simply brought as a support, but not as a proof. So that as far as defining words in Nedarim, Rabbi Yoshia agrees with the Tanna Kama that you go according to common speech. The pasuk was simply a support to the idea that mevushal can refer to tzli as well. Koinum tavshil v'chulei, and we saw in the Mishnah if a person restricted himself from tavshil, he's Ozer in the gravy type, loose type dish, and muter ba'ova. The Gemara asks, why is he muter ba'ova? V'hom mi tavshil nodar. He vowed not to benefit, not to enjoy, partake of tafshil. Tafshil would it seem to include ove as well. So why does the Mishnah make this distinction? Omar Abaye, Hai Tana, Komidi de Misachil Be Rifta Tavshil Koru Le. The Tana defines the word tavshil as that which you would eat together with bread. So that if you have something like a soup or a dish that has a lot of gravy in it, people will tend to eat bread along with it. However, things that are thick dishes like a bowl of porridge, people will not eat porridge with bread. That's as far as our Tana is concerned. So ova is not classified as tafshil. Tafshil, once again, that kind of food, that kind of prepared food that you would eat along with bread. V'hot Tanya, and here we have a Tanaic source that supports this idea that tafshil is that which you eat along with bread. Hanoder mina tafshil, also b'chol minei tafshil. Person who swore not to partake of tafshil, he's forbidden all kinds of tafshil. V'yosir b'tzliu b'shalok u'mavushal. He is prohibited from roasted foods, from shaluk foods, and from cooked foods. V'osir b'hitrios rakos shehachilin oichlin bohen piton. And here we must use our markings. Notice we've dashed underlined a couple words. One of the words was tafshil at the beginning of the source. And we also highlighted the expression oichlin bohen piton. There are other words too, which are noted for specific reasons as the Gemara goes on. But you see a relationship between tafshil and that which that which one eats along with bread. The last line of the source for Ozer, he cannot partake of. Hitrios is a type of vegetation, also known as diluin, that are hitrios rakos, soft diluin, that the sick eat together with bread. So again, the purpose of bringing this source in, to citing this source, is to show that tafshil is that which you would eat together with bread. Now the Gemara has some questions on the source itself. Aini, is that so? Namely, that diluin, which was referred to in the source by the word hitrios, that diluin, that type of vegetation, is good for the ailing. HaRav Yirmiyah. We present a story involving Rabbi Yirmiyah taking ill. Ol legabe hahu asya la'asiyah. An asya is a doctor. A doctor went to heal him. Chaza kara mi demochas bebeisei. The doctor saw a kara, and if you notice, for one type of vegetation, there are a number of different words. That's why our write-ins between the lines should be very helpful. Kara is a dalas, just like we saw before. The word hitrios was diluin. So this doctor saw a dalas vegetation. The mochas that's lying, bebeisei, that's lying in this sick man in Rav Yirmiyah's house, shavke v'nofik, he abandoned him and walked out. Omar, and the doctor said, Malach moise islay l'dein bebeisei. This guy, meaning this is Rav Yirmiyah, he has in his house the angel of death. Ve'ano Allah asa yaseh, and I'm supposed to go in there to heal him? Now, what did we do with our markings? We dashed underline the word kora, which was dalas, and malach hamoves, the angel of death, so that you see that dalas is something that's quite detrimental to the ailing individual. Now, a house marking appears, and on the side under the nosei mivneh heading, the nosei is the topic heading with the mivneh structural note. The house shape are deos lahasbir im diluin toivim l'odam choyla oiloi. We'll confront this issue head on. Are diluin good for a sick man or not? The Gemara first approach, third wide line of the Gemara, lo kashya, ha b'rechichi, ha b'ashuni. It depends on the hardness, physical quality of the diluin. If it's rechichi, it's soft. If it's soft, it's good. If it's hard, then it's b'ashuni means they're hard. Then it's bad. Rova bar ula omar ha b'kora gufe ha b'gave dekora. This vegetation has an internal part to it, and it has a skin or a shell to it. So that in the kora gufe, the fruit, the vegetation itself, that's not good. That which is big, I made a slight error. In other words, I want to make a distinction here between the vegetation itself and that which is inside of it. It has you find different vegetations that have, let's say, a seed complex within the center of it. So that's begave, that which is inside of it. That is good. Ha begave de kora, that which is inside the kora is good. Diom Rav Yehuda, luliva de kora, besilka, luliva de kisna, bekuscha. Here we look in the Ran commentary. Luliva de kora. That expression means mashe besocha, that which is inside of it. That's to be eaten. Basilka, yivashlenu im tradin, the Ran says. Cook it with tradin, another kind of vegetation. And the luliva, the kisna, the internal part of the flax plant, is bekuscha. The Ran says, mashe besocha tov lochlo im kusach. That which is inside of the kisna is good to eat together with kusach. Kusach is the name of a type of dish. It's a dairy dish that is described elsewhere in the Shas. So for our purposes, the term luliva is that which is inside the respective vegetation. So that which is inside the kora, as we saw in the Ran, is good to be cooked with silka. With that silka, again, another type of vegetation. The Gemara continues, V'dovar zeh osur la'omro b'fnei am haaretz. And this, that Rav Yehuda just taught us about, these beneficial dishes, one is not allowed to teach it, to inform the am haaretz. Am haaretz is the ignorant ones. The Ran says, so that they don't uproot all the flax for medicinal purposes, or for this purpose. There's a Rashi that says something that might sound shocking, but he says, this is very healthful, very therapeutic. And we are not allowed to tell the Amoratzim things that they can benefit from. The other pshat that Rashi gives is similar to that which is in the Ran, and that is the fear that they will get rid of all of them, making them not available to the public anymore. The Gemara continues. Rava Omar Man Choylin Rabbanon. We saw in the source, we have a little star to the left-hand side of the Gemara. You can align with the star above. Reference was made to Choylin, that we're eating the diluin, or I should say the Choylin, the sick people referred to in that source, weren't people that were pathologically or physiologically ailing. Rather, it's a reference to the Rabbanon, the rabbis. The rabbis are considered choylin in the sense that, as a result of their extenuating themselves to learn Torah, their Torah exertion results in their being physically weakened. But actual sick they are not. So the Rabbanon are considered weakened from what they would have been had they not been learning Torah. The Rashi says something curious. He says, Choylin is Rabbanon, she'oskim b'Torah ve'enom ne'enim min olam, uboin lidei choli. They abstain from all kinds of worldly benefits, and as a result, they have a tendency to become ill. So we saw different approaches to why the Rabbanon are described as choylin. That having been said, a person who is medically ailing, suffering some type of pathological disorder, so he should not eat diluin. But the Rabbanon, who are basically healthy but they're in a weakened state, diluin is fine. Rava Litame. Rava here that described the Rabbanan as cholim is consistent with what Rava has said elsewhere. The Omar Rava, we continue at the top of Omid Beis, Keman Matzlinon al Ktsiri va'al Mri'i. Based on whose opinion, which Tana would say that we should pray every day of the year for the Ktsiri and Mri'i. These two expressions are references to those that are sick. The prayer for Ktsiri, the Rashi says, Roifei Chilei Amo Yisrael, a bracha that you're familiar with in the from the Shmona Esrei. And Mri'i, also a bracha in the Shmona Esrei, Al Pleitas Sofrehem, those that remain from amongst the scholars. But what we see here is that Ktsiri and Mri'i are both terms referring to those that are ill, and the bracha Pleitas Sofrehem, a bracha for the Talmidei Chachamim, who are referred to as Mri'i meaning sick. And this is all under Rava's name, who refers to the Rabbanan as cholim. And in answer to Rava's question, based on whom would we daven for them every day? Keman Rabbi Yossi. This is in accordance with Rabbi Yossi's opinion in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, where numerous opinions appear regarding the time of man's judgment. According to the Chachomim in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, it's pointless to pray every day because judgment was passed on Rosh Hashanah with the Gemar Din, with the final ruling following shortly thereafter on Yom Kippur. That's it. What's signed is sealed and delivered. So there's no purpose in praying. However, according to Rabbi Yossi, that a person is judged every day. So there's value of a person's fate is let's say is up in the air every day. Every succeeding day is a new day of judgment. So that there is room for prayer to help settle the judgment in a positive sense. So as the Gemara concludes, Mida Omar Ktsiri Umri'i, from the fact that Rava made reference to these two categories, Shma Mino Ktsiri Mamish. Ktsiri is a reference to people that are actually sick, and Mri'i is a reference to the Rabbanan. And in order to appreciate this a little bit more, we look at the Ran commentary on the third line from the top. Ktsiri Mamish. That's Ktsiri or Ktsiri Mamish. Chaylin, really sick, meaning they're sick pathologically. Well, Mikru Ktsiri, the Fisha Nafsham Tsara Mach Mascham. They're called Ktsiri because they are of, let's say, a tense spirit because of their ailment. The Gemara continues, Umuter Ba'ava. The Mishnah mentioned that one who was Noder Min Hamavushal is restricted from, he cannot partake of loose dishes, soup-like dishes, gravy dishes, but he's allowed to partake of thick ones. We should point out, in anticipation of the Gemara, that he who had vowed not to partake of Mevushal is allowed to partake of a tafshil ova because one does not eat bread with it. As we saw earlier in the Gemara, that if it's something that you would eat bread with, then it's called a tafshil. If it's something that you would not eat bread with, something that's like that's a tafshil ova, then it doesn't come under the restriction of the of that which tafshil implies. The Gemara, Masnisin delo kivat bavlo. Our Mishnah that said ova, you would not eat with bread. In other words, that was the implication of the Mishnah, as we saw later defined in the Gemara. Delo kibavloi is not consistent or is not like the practice of the Babylonians. The Omar Rabbi Zera, Bavloi Tipshoi Dachli Lachma Balachma. Rabbi Zera says the foolish Babylonians whose custom was to eat bread together with bread, which is another way of saying that they, the Babylonians, would, together with their porridge, they would eat bread. So, our Mishnah that says you would not eat bread together with a thick dish, that's a practice that you won't find amongst the Babylonians. Omar Rav Chisda. Now Rav Chisda was from Bovel. Leka de mashil lahon laholin nakdone dehutzal hodain daisa heichin mali lemichla. Rav Chisda says, is there no one that will ask the nakdone dehutzal? Nakdone are people that are very careful, they're diligent, they're precise with regard to, in this context, with regard to their food eating. Is there no one that's going to ask them, we'll call them these culinary experts, how is daisa best eaten? And what's the let's say the doubt, the quandary in which Rav Chisda finds himself? Is it as follows? Dechiti, that means daisa, porridge that's made from wheat. Belachma dechiti, eat that along with wheat bread. Udesairi, a porridge made from barley. Belachma desairi, with barley bread. Oidilmo, or maybe the better way is dechiti bedesairi, desairi bedechiti. A wheat porridge with barley bread, and a barley porridge with wheat bread. So this is what Rav Chisda, who was from Bavel, was concerned with. Rava achle behasisi. Rava ate the porridge with hasisi. Rashi says, Ochla b'chasisi, haymalafis pito b'chasisi. Forshlo mesach psachim, kimcha davishuna, kemach shaklois sorim shalaviu shlish, umiyabshin oisan betanur v'klufin hein. It's a reference to a certain kind of roasted grain that in our Gemara, Rava would eat along with his bread, these roasted grains. Rabba bar Rav Huna, ashkechei le Rav Huna, de ka'ochil daisa betzbose. Rabba found Rav Huna eating porridge with his fingers. In other words, no fork, no spoon, directly with his fingers. Omar le, amai kochil mor biyodei? So Rav Huna asked, Rav Huna, why are you eating with your hands? Omar le, hachi Omar Rav. Thusly says Rav, daisa betzbasa bosim, v'kol shekain betartin, v'kol dekain betlas. And here again we're going to translate the Gemara, but there is a suspicion that something much deeper is being alluded to over here. So, as we've mentioned many times in the past, the Gemara markings, Daf Yomi Shum, do not delve into the hidden mysteries lying behind the examples of the Gemara, but we do encourage people to look into these things further. So, Rav says that eating daisa with your finger is bosim, is tasty. And all the more so if you do it with 2 fingers, and even more than that with 3 fingers. Omar le Rav lechia brei. V'chein Omar le Rav Huna l'Rabba brei. So you have these 2 Amoroim telling their sons. Mizamnin loch. There are 2 explanations that you'll find in the Rashi. The second explanation he has is that if you are invited to eat a meal, so lemechal daisa, if you're invited to eat daisa ad parsa, then it's worth seeking out such a meal, walking a parsa, but not more. Parsa is a distance. It's made of 4 meal. A meal is 2,000 amas, roughly a kilometer, so a parsa would be 4 kilometers. If you are invited lemechal bisra de tura, if you're invited to eat ox meat, ad losa parson, it's worth walking up till 3 parsa. It's 12 meal, it's like 12 kilometers. Omar le Rav L'chio Brei, V'chein Omar le Rav Huna L'Rabo Brei. Again, you see this the same names with these Rabbanon telling their sons. Kol Meidam Lo Tiflot Kamei Raboch. Meidam means anything. In this context, do not spit out anything. Kol Meidam Lo Tiflot. Lo Tiflot is do not spit out in front of your rabbi. Don't spit anything. Labar min korah v'daisa, except for after consuming korah, that type of vegetation that we alluded to before, and daisa, the porridge, shehein doimin lepsilta shel avor. It's very hard to digest them, these things, just like a piece of molten lead. Vafilu kami shover malka plot, and even if you're in front of the Persian monarch, shovur malk shover, King Shafur, spit it out. You can see in the Rashi, kol meidam lo tiflu kami raboch lo toruk rok b'fnei rab. Don't spit out spittle in front of your rab. Kedomer b'maseches eruvin harok l'fnei rabo chayav misa. One who does spit in front of his rabbi is worthy of death. Shenemar v'chomsane avu moves. Avlimo chalta dlas v'daisa v'zamach roik b'ficha. If you ate these foods, dlas, or a type of vegetation, or daisa, or this porridge, and after that some saliva or spittle accumulated in your mouth, plot b'fnei raboch uzrokas l'chutz sheish bo sakonis nefoshes. It's injurious. This accumulated saliva after eating these dishes is dangerous. Shein kosher l'guf shel adam kipsila shel. They're as they can inflict injury on a person's body, just like a string of molten lead. The Gemara continues. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, chad ochel daisa betzbasei v'chad ochel behutza. One of these two rabbis ate daisa, like we saw above, with his fingers, and the other used, we'll call it a makeshift fork. Hutza is a piece of bark that after peeled off a tree and fashioned in a specific way, it can be used as an eating implement. The one who ate using the implement said to the one who ate with his fingers, until when are you going to feed me your tsoa? Tsoa is a reference to the debris that accumulates under one's fingernails. People will say, why don't you clean your fingernails? So he who doesn't do that, tsoa accumulates there, and when you take your fingers and dip it into the bowl containing the daisa, so some of that finger, we'll call finger debris, is left in the bowl. Next person takes his portion, he's going to end up eating some of that debris. So he was asking here, until when are you going to feed me your tsoa? The one who ate with his fingers said to the one who used the hutza device, called makeshift spoon device, he says, I object. Until when are you going to be feeding me your saliva? Because as opposed to when you eat with your fingers, where you consume the food on your fingers and you wipe your fingers clean. But if you're using a spoon, after you eat from the spoon, some of your saliva accumulates on the spoon, and people don't clean off the spoon before they dip it into the bowl a second time. So, hence the finger eater's objection to the one who ate using the hutza, charging him with feeding me your saliva. We have a new marking, a diamond appears on the side under the Mivneh heading Havlotis Rabbi Yehuda. We'll be highlighting Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Aisu L'Kamayhu Blusfein. These two rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, there was brought in front of them, and they were served with blusfein. Rashi explains blusfein as te'enim, figs, shinizbashios, overripe figs. Rabbi Yehuda ate from it, and Rabbi Shimon did not. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda, my time alochomor. Why are you, sir, not eating? Amalei Rabbi Shimon, elu ein yotzim b'nei mayim kol ikar. these things, the blue swine, they never leave your digestive system. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda, Kol Shekain Shenismoch Alei L'Mochar, all the more so good reason for eating these things, because as long as food stays within your me'ayim, within your innards, you have no appetite to eat more. So it's a very financially and health-wise beneficial to eat something like that. That's not yotzim ibnei ma'ayin. Rabbi Yehuda, Hav Yosef Kamed Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Yehuda was seated in the presence of Rabbi Tarfon. Amalei Rabbi Tarfon, Hayom Ponecha Nitzuvim. Rabbi Tarfon says to Rabbi Yehuda, your face today is all aglow. Amalei Emesh Yotzu Avodecha Lasodeh Ve'eviu Lanu Tradin Ve'alchanu Below Melach. So Rabbi Yehuda says, last night your servants went to the field and brought to us tradin, a type of vegetation, and we ate the tradin without salt. Had we eaten them with salt, then all the more so would our faces be radiant. Omra hahu matronisa. There was a matronisa, like the name sounds, a matron. She's a woman of high rank in the Roman society. So it was a matronisa that said to the Rabbi Yehuda, More v'ravi, how can it be? You're a legal scholar. More is someone who teaches, who rules, offers legal rulings in law. Ravi means intoxicated. They're almost contradictory expressions. How can you be someone who is a legal decider and a drunkard at the same time? Now, these people who were drunk would have there's a certain change in skin pigmentation, giving this appearance of radiance. So she asks him, how can that be? Omar Law. So Rabbi Yehuda says to the matronisa, Hemnusa. Hemnusa is an expression like a vow. I swear. Hemnusa biyoda dahi itza. This is an expression. We say, my trustworthiness is in your hands. Again, it's an expression indicating a vow. He swears, itaimna el kedusha v'avdalta. As far as wine is concerned, that intoxicates. By your life, if I drink any wine other than Kiddush Friday night and Havdalah the Saturday night when we make the Havdalah ceremony, and Vabo Kosi de Pischa, and the 4 cups on Pesach, on Seder night. And after drinking the 4 cups of Pesach, they have such an effect on me that my temples, I have to bind my temples from Pesach until Atzeres, until Shavuos, because of the headache that I experience from the 4 cups. So what is Rabbi Yehuda saying in so many words? That I am not suspect of drinking wine in the middle of the week, and hence you can't associate my radiance with intoxication. Ella, as far as my radiance is concerned, Chochmas Odom Toyer Pon, of the wisdom of a man enlightens his visage. Omar Le Hahut Tzeduki Le Rabbi Yehuda Ponecha Doimin. We should have pointed out earlier, but the double underline that you see is highlighting a certain theme that you see throughout these sections of Gemara. And on the side, under the Mivneh heading, we indicate Maisim Akshurim Lemara Ponav Rabbi Yehuda HaKarnos. Different stories that are associated with the radiance of Rabbi Yehuda. So here is again a third story. A tzeduki. A tzeduki is a non-believer, a scoffer. He says to Rabbi Yehuda, Ponecha doimen ikemalvi ribis ikemegadli chazirin. You look like someone who loans for interest. It's a loan shark, or someone who raises swine. Both of these questionable professions leads to great wealth, and a person of great wealth eats good foods, rich foods, and his complexion is one of uniqueness, a radiance. So the Tzeduki, the scoffer, turns to Rabbi Yehuda and says, Hey, Rabbi, you're a loan shark or you're a swine raiser. Amar lei, Rabbi Yehuda says back to the Tzeduki, biudoi travayu asiron. As far as amongst the Jewish people, both occupations are forbidden. Jews are not allowed to raise swine. Jews are not allowed to extend loans to fellow Jews for interest. Now, as far as my complexion is concerned, my radiance, there are 24 bathrooms between my house and the study hall, the base medrash. V'chol shah v'shah ani nichnas l'chol echad ve'echad. And here we'll just translate. And he says, and every hour I go into each one of them. Doesn't mean that in every hour he went into 24 bathrooms, or the 24 bathrooms represent 24 hours, and each hour he went into one. That's something that one would have to look into a little further. But the point is that by always making sure that your body is waste-free, as is suggested by this analogy, that will result in improved complexion. Rabbi Yehuda kad Ozer lebei midrasha. Rabbi Yehuda, when he would go to the base medrash, shokil gufa al kasvei, he would carry on his shoulder. Kasvei is his shoulder, a gufa. A gufa is a type of kankan, a receptacle like a barrel, and he would carry this kankan, this receptacle, from his house to the base medrash. And what was his purpose in carrying this gulfa? He would invert it and sit on it, use it as a chair. Omar, Rabbi Yehuda then announced or exclaimed, praiseworthy is the malachas, your efforts, your work, but it's your efforts that end up bestowing upon you honor. So what kind of efforts bestow upon you honor? Instead of having to sit on the ground, by carrying the gulfa to the base medrash, he was thereby, in effect, bringing honor upon himself, that he wouldn't be left sitting on the floor. Rabbi Shimon shokil tzona al kasvei. Rabbi Shimon carried a tzona. Tzona is a receptacle, just like we had the word above this was gulfa. So he carried a tzona on his shoulder to the base medrash. Amar gedola malacha shemechabedes says baileha. Praiseworthy and great is the type of his work that bestows honor to the owner. Devisu de Rabbi Yehuda nakdis amra. The wife of Rabbi Yehuda, she went out and took with her some wool. Avda glima dehutvi, and she made an article of clothing called glima dehutvi. It's a good kind of, let's say, coat. Kad nafkis l'shuka mechasya bay. When she would go to the market, she would cover herself with this clothing item that she made from the wool. And kad nafik Rabbi Yehuda l'tzliye, and when Rabbi Yehuda would go out to pray, have a michsi umatzli, he would cloak himself with this glima dehutvi and matzli and daven. The kad michsi bei have a mevorach boruch she'atani me'il, and when he would encloak himself in this, he would say this benediction: Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'atani me'il, that wraps me in a coat. Zimno chada gozer of Shimon ben Gamliel tanisa. On one occasion, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel was the nasi of his generation, the leader of the generation. He ruled that the public shall observe a fast, and when a public fasting is established, is declared by the rabbis, it involves much more than just mere fasting. There's community assembly for introspection. There are prayers that are recited. There's a Torah reading. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel had ruled that they shall observe a public fast. most often you find that in the context of a period of drought or some other public affliction or oppression, and you want divine intervention. So in order to arouse the Almighty in your defense, so fasting is a well-known practice. Rabbi Yehuda lo asa lebeit hanisa. Rabbi Yehuda did not join together with the communal assembly on that fast day. Amr lei, and they said to him, lo is. They said to Rab Shimon Gamliel, who had declared the fast, lo islei kisuya. He can't come. He doesn't have anything to wear. He has nothing to cover himself with. Shodale glima v'lo kabil. They sent to Rabbi Yehuda a glima, a type of a cloak or outer garment, and he did not accept it. And we turn to the top of Daf Nun Amud Aleph. If it wasn't clear till now, Rabbi Yehuda was extremely impoverished. Very likely it's Rabbi Yehuda bar Beloi, who's featured in a Drosh in Maseches Sanhedrin Daf Chof. And there, as well as over here, Rabbi Yehuda there was one article of clothing that he had to share with his wife. That's what we saw in the Gemara. He was a very poor individual. And when the Rabbi Yehuda didn't show up at the Beit Hanisa, the students of the other rabbis said, he doesn't have anything to wear, which is simply a reflection of his poverty. And they sent him this glima, this overcoat, and he didn't accept it. Doli tzifsa, Rabbi Yehuda raised a mat, picked up a mat that he was sitting on. Amar v'yamalei l'shlucha, and he told the agent from the Rabbanon that brought the coat to him, Chazi mai ika, do you see under this mat? And here a miracle took place, and the area got filled with gold coins. So if you think that I'm impoverished because I don't have any access to money, look at all the gold over here. Miu lo nichali dishani behadein alma. However, I don't want to benefit. I don't want to experience enjoyment, physical, classic enjoyment, while in this world. And hence, my impoverished state is something that I prefer to be in. And as you can see, as far as access to money and riches, I have no problem with that. No problem accessing it. But I don't want to benefit from it. With that, we conclude our shiur for today.